Okay, I think we're live. If anybody wants to just let me know that they can see me and hear me, that would be amazing. We're actually live on time. We're actually live on time today. Very happy about that. And I think we're in the right spot. So while people are joining in, I'm just going to jump in and start answering questions. I'll start with the one in the chat here. It says, how do you get rid of artist block? I don't know. I think there are seasons in life where you just don't have the time or maybe the energy to paint as much as you want to. And that happens, and that's okay. But if painting is something that really fills you up, then I would encourage you to see what you can maybe shift in your schedule to find time to paint. Obviously, optimizing your health to paint, that's something that I'm always working on. But as far as thinking you should be painting and maybe not wanting to paint, I think you probably just need some inspiration at that point. So I would follow your favorite artists and see what they've been up to. Watch YouTube videos that are inspiring to you. Anything that maybe disrupts your routine a little bit, just to get you inspired. Finding something that you're like, I want to paint that, will be huge for you. And I actually just saw something the other day on a Watercolor Facebook group of a landscape, and it was super simple, and the colors were just so punchy, and I thought, I want to paint that. I want to do that. And I got really excited to paint landscapes again. So, you could also just let it happen and see what happens when you let life happen and just being open to inspiration that might come your way. I have a lot of questions that came in since our last live, a lot of feedback, a lot of amazing comments. All of you have been so sweet and kind and just excited, and I've just been overwhelmed. And you've been showing me the fish that you've been painting and all the cool things you're doing and how excited this series has made you for watercolor again. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay, things are happening. It's working. Holy cow. It's fun. I was actually thinking about this last night. It's so fun to be really good at your job because I haven't always been really good at my job. In my last position with social media for a million different clients, I struggled. I remember I had this financial client, and every month I was responsible for putting together their newsletter all about finances. And if you know me, holy moly, the last thing in the world I want to even think about is numbers and money. My husband does all of that. He is so good at that. I don't ever have to even think about that, and it is such a blessing. But in that job, I had to. Oh, that was so hard. But anyway, it's been so fun getting your affirmation and encouragement and feeling like, oh, I'm actually good at this. It's a really good feeling. I love to paint everything. It's hard to choose. Yeah, I would just go with that. Just start painting everything and maybe you'll narrow it down. That's super fun. I had somebody ask me how to make different types of light tan and beige colors, so many variables of cool and warm. How do you pick, depending on if they're in the sunshine or the shade? Yeah, I guess, I would pick maybe cool. Well, this one's hard because, for one, being more of a messy painter, sometimes I just let it happen and I don't think too hard about it. And then having that limited palette will also help you because you're working with colors that work well together already. So buff titanium has been a lifesaver for me because before I used buff titanium, I was using white, like titanium white, and that made all the colors I mixed with it cool. It has this blue undertone, and I didn't like that. I try to paint more warm typically, and buff titanium was able to lighten the colors I mixed it with and produce this warm neutral color. So my top tip for that would be use buff titanium. And then try mixing that with azo yellow, quinacridone gold, opera pink, and just practice different mixes and see what works best for you. See what you kind of think, oh, that worked. And then don't overthink it either because it'll work out. I wouldn't overthink making sure you have the exact perfect color. If you're doing a pet portrait even, I try to get some neutrals in there, and then I try to have fun with color too, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be right, totally on. I was never able to create the scraping technique to mimic the gills on the first day fish. Had to scratch a few lines in the tail, couldn't do the body, wondering if it was my paper and the paper texture. Scraping, yes, it does. Your paper will affect how you scrape. So will how much pigment is in the paint that you're scraping off, and if that paint is a staining color, and the dryness level of the paint. So I honestly didn't start scraping probably until like 4 years ago, which is really late in my watercolor journey when I finally started using the scraping technique. So already, if you're a beginner and you're scraping, you're ahead of the curve. You're doing amazing. And just by trying it. And it will take most likely some practice. I've actually been really amazed that a lot of you have had the success you've had with your first day fish and scraping. I'm so impressed because it's hard to get that timing right. You just need to practice. I think it's mostly just to do with those things like the dryness level. It's number one, the dryness level, and the pigment that's in your mix. The more pigment you'll be able to scrape away and see that scraped line. And thank you guys for all your wonderful comments. This is so fun. Okay. All right. Another vital lesson I learned was to use the proper tracing. Okay. We don't really talk about tracing too much in this series because I have a comprehensive video about how I trace my art. And in that video, I talk about the use of Ceral wax-free carbon tracing paper. It's a red box. It's kind of like what you would find parchment paper in, a long box. That's the paper I recommend if you do use transfer paper instead of transferring from like a light source with a window. If you use transfer paper, yes, wax-free paper is really important because otherwise your paint will resist wherever you traced your lines. So very important to get wax-free because water does not mix with wax or oil and it will resist. That happens a lot. I don't know if you guys use Yupo paper, but anywhere you put a fingerprint on Yupo paper, your watercolor won't show up there. And that's really frustrating, but you can scrub that off, wipe that off. Oil and water don't mix, and so you got to keep that in mind when you paint. All right, we have some questions coming in from chat. What's the difference between wetting the paper with water, then painting on it, and just using a brush with watery paint on it? That's a really good question because you know that I am a big proponent of my 3-step process, which is painting with water, dropping in color, and then using texture techniques. Now, painting with water first allows you to, if you paint with paint, right, pigment and water right away onto dry paper, you will start to get edges as that paint dries. So you actually have less control when you paint that way. If you paint with water first and start dropping in color, your colors will mix in that pool of water, producing really fun effects, and you will likely have more time and control for the edges. So you've seen how I like to, after I drop in color and I have a nice pool of water, then I go in and manipulate those edges. So you can use your grainer brush and make furry edges. You can leave them hard. You can soften them. You actually have more control when you do it that way, which is kind of counterintuitive, but it really helped me when I figured that out. What are the most common mistakes and how to avoid or fix them? Yes, there are a few common beginner mistakes. I think the beginner, not really mistakes, but just learning, right? Because you've never done this before. And it's common to struggle with water control. So how wet should my paper be? How wet should my paint be? How wet should my brush be? And those are the 3 properties that we're going to go over in a video next week. And supplies are a huge issue when you're just starting out because there's so many supplies out there. It can be so hard to just know what to do and all the terminology that's new and you just don't know what's what. So supply confusion is a big one. And I think approaching it like oil and acrylic is also a big thing for beginners because obviously it's paint, right? And you just intuitively think, well, I'm just going to paint it on this piece of paper. But like we just talked about, painting with water first and then putting your color in, which is, different than what you do if you had oil or acrylic, is actually beneficial. So you have to kind of turn it upside down, approach it totally differently, and it will help you if you know those things starting. So we also have a video next week called, I think it's next week, called Common Beginner Mistakes, or Common Watercolor Challenges Solved. Because I don't like calling them mistakes, because I think they're important learning lessons, and mistakes you can kind of feel bad about. But if you're learning, and you're learning by doing, then you're like, oh, I did it. You learned something, even if your painting didn't quite turn out. Oh, that's cool. YouTube recommended this. That's so fun. I'm excited that you are here and that YouTube brought you here. How fun is that? I have another one. I know I'm such a realist when it comes to wanting to capture realism in these watercolor paintings, but that's not the purpose of watercolor, and I get that. Well, it can be. I follow a few really, really talented realism watercolor painters, and it's just impressive. Not only the talent they have, but the patience they have to paint such realistic watercolors, and I think the magic happens when you combine realism with areas of abstract. And I try to do that in my portraits, where I'll keep a lot of realistic detail in their face and then kind of have fun with watery techniques on the body and the ears and the background. So if you love realism, you can do that. I mean, that's more of a stylistic thing, and I think that's great. Quinacridone Gold. So a few of you emailed me that Quinacridone Gold, American Journey brand, has been out of stock at Cheap Joe's. If that happens and you really want it, I would say just get a different brand of Quinacridone Gold, like M. Graham or Daniel Smith, likely, and check other stores. And you can just get a different brand, or you can get a different brown, like a warm brown. I think raw sienna is really pretty. That one would be pretty for like a substitute. So you can work around that. Somebody asked me about my palette, and I'm hoping to get one. So that lucky student, I actually shipped her one because I love it so much and I want to share it. But I am trying to work with the manufacturer of that palette and get like a wholesale order that I can fill and ship to everybody, because I think it's just so cool when you can, I don't know, it took me a long time to get to that palette and I love it so much, so I want to share it with you. It's not available yet, but there's a lot of other ways and a ton of palettes out there. So I know you guys can all find something that works for your painting practice. So we have hot press is not beginner friendly. Oh my gosh, it dries. Ugh. It's not ever friendly in my opinion. I tried hot press, I don't know, maybe twice at the most, because I just hated it. Oh, I hated it. The water does. It soaks in so fast. And if you know me, I use a lot of, even with a ton of water that I use, it would still soak in really fast. I don't use hot press because I just don't like it. But a lot of people do. So, well, I don't know. I don't know if a lot of people do. Some people obviously do. So good for them. It's not good for me. You just got to try things. A Cheap Joe's sample pack of professional watercolor paper, if you're ready to kind of go dive in and find out what professional watercolor papers you like to use, start with that. And other people are agreeing. You also have to love hard edges in your work with hot press. Yep, because the water soaks in and that edge will be hard. And sometimes you can't soften it very well. And then you lose that freshness when you try to do that. What's the best way to re-wet dried paint? A lot of artists use a spray bottle, and I actually might start doing that just because in my videos when I'm filming demos, I'm spending a lot of time just using a wet brush to rehydrate my paint. And that's something that I kind of have to edit out. And then it messes with the timing of me wanting to try to deliver it to you artists in real time. So I think what I might start doing is just have a spray bottle, and then you can just spray across your whole palette, let it soak in a little bit, and then when you go in with your brush, it should loosen up a lot faster. So that would be my recommendation if you don't want to spend time doing it with a brush. Oh my gosh, but your course has made such a big difference in my animal portraits. Thank you. Yay! That's my goal. I just think there's so many cool little hacks especially with animal portraits, that I've learned along the way. And if you can get to those faster, how cool is that? You know, if you know that. How long have you been painting with watercolor? I actually had that on my list to kind of share my story, because a lot of other people have been asking me. Like, I love to know people's stories and how things are going and how they got to where they are right now. I've been painting since I was a kid. So obviously every kid paints with watercolor in art class in school, and I loved it. But the real magic happened when my aunt, who lives up in Duluth, and she's a professional calligraphy artist. She has tons of watercolors, and she shared her books and her beautiful professional supplies with me, even though I was only like 11 years old, and I fell in love really hard and fast with watercolor once I started painting with those nice supplies. And she had a ton of books too. So even a few of my very first paintings were really good because I would follow these tutorials from these books. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just did that? That's insane, right? And then you start, just as you go, finding out what you like to paint, what inspires you from what you see around you. And then my mom was a vet tech, so she would bring me to work, and I saw all these pictures of animals on their bulletin board that their clients would just share with them, like, thank you for taking care of Josie, and here's a picture of how she's doing. And so I had all these reference photos, because this was before phones, right before everybody had a cell phone in their pocket. And I would look at those pictures, and then my mom would buy me like dog and cat calendars, and then I would look at those, and I just started painting from them. And so people were noticing what I was doing, and they're like, can you paint my pet? And I would, and I started painting for free, and then I started charging. And that's just what I've always been the most excited. I think aside from hiking and being outside, painting is my favorite thing. And obviously, you know, my kids and my family are really my favorite thing. But as far as making money and doing this as a living, it's painting. So I hope that explains it enough. I just love watercolor, and I love connecting with people. I'm kind of a people person. I've had a few jobs where I worked as a teacher with kids and people, and those are my favorite jobs, when I feel like I'm kind of caring for people and making a positive difference in their lives. And so this has been a really fun experience, just feeling like I'm not only painting, but connecting with people and helping them. What? That's crazy. That's so cool. Okay. Help me understand, watercolor paper doesn't really absorb water. Water just sits on top of it. So it does absorb water. And the amount it absorbs depends on how much you put on it and the type of paper you have. But it will sit on top of it for a pretty long time, especially if you put a lot on it, before it soaks in. So it does both. And before it's completely soaked in is when you have time to manipulate it. And then once it's completely soaked in and dry, like it's soaked in and kind of evaporated, and all you have left is the pigment, you can also use more techniques like lifting to continue to manipulate it. But I would say most of the magic happens while it's still wet, and you're using your techniques to manipulate it at that time, before it's dry. I hope that makes sense. All right, I'm starting to teach my grandkids, and I'm having them watch your course. Thank you. That is so fun. Some of your favorite art books, or a video on that. I don't have a video on that. I could share that. I do love going to the library. I think that's my favorite thing. And just flipping through the whole section of watercolor books. They usually have a watercolor section, every library I've been to, and you get introduced to a lot of different types of books in one go without kind of having to search online. And there's something different about libraries and having it in your hand and seeing all the options at one time that I think is better than Amazon. But as far as specific recommendation, Sterling Edwards, and he has books, very good books. I would definitely recommend him. And he has a cool approach to watercolor. He simplifies it, and he's not afraid to share everything. Mary White, very good, but her book, I feel like it leaves some stuff out, and it kind of makes you wonder, well, how does she do that really? But she's extremely talented. Morton Solberg, he passed away somewhat recently, and I don't know if he has books, but I would encourage you to look at his art. There's some more out there. There's like I can't remember their names, but that's what I would start with, and start with your library. Watching your videos is helping me a lot. Oh, that's so sweet. Yes. Oh my gosh. 100% cotton paper will really help your painting practice. I do, like I said, though, I'm a big proponent of Fabriano Studio watercolor paper, and that's only 25% cotton. But it's, it's a preference thing too. Do you ever work in other mediums? Alcohol ink works similar. I've seen alcohol ink, and it's gorgeous. I've just never tried it because I could try it, and it looks so pretty, but at the same time, it's like I'd rather just do what I already know I love. So I might make a video with that maybe, but it's kind of a different genre, and I've already found the genre I like the most, and so I'm just leaning into that. But I have seen people do alcohol ink. So pretty. You can also do Yupo paper with watercolor. Kind of it kind of looks like alcohol ink. And I'm definitely going to do some Yupo videos on my YouTube channel down the road. There will be Yupo videos. Very, very beautiful things happen on Yupo paper with watercolor paint. All right, so we had somebody ask if I could do videos about fur. And I think that would be very good because I still struggle with curly fur on pets. So there's different ways and different strategies to do like feathers and curly fur, long fur, short fur. So I'm hoping to, have some videos that will help you with that. And I had an artist to email me about how she approached her watercolor, that she had a watercolor painting and she just didn't like how it turned out. And then she came back to it. Excuse me, I have a runny nose today. But she came back to it and thought, oh my gosh, it actually looks really good. And that's happened to me multiple times where I finish a painting and I'm like, oh, what a dud. And then I come back to it a week later and I thought, oh, this is actually really gorgeous. How come I was so hard on myself? And I just think it's because you have this clear vision in your head. Your painting doesn't match that vision, so you think it's a failure. But then when that vision fades away and you come back to it, you're like, oh, that actually looks really good. So don't give up on your art. Give it some time. Do you add ox gall to your water? Your colors flow so easily. No, I don't. I've never used that. Now I kind of want to see if it makes them flow even more. It's really just the American Journey paint and using a lot of water when you paint. It's encouraging all that good stuff to happen. I noticed you really scrub your brush on the bottom of your water container. Is there something in there that I scrub on? No. I do have a palette that has little ridges, or a water bucket that has ridges in the bottom that you can scrub your brush on to get all the paint off. But I guess I'm just a little aggressive in cleaning it when I scrub it on the bottom of my cup. But I don't recommend that because that probably will make your brush wear out faster than it should. So, be kind to your supplies, but I'm also kind of just let's get in there and do it messy style, and then I'll deal with the consequences afterwards. All right, we have some more. Let's see. Have you ever used black Yupo? Oh my gosh. No, I've never used black Yupo paper. I'm nervous thinking about it, but excited. I didn't even know that existed. Okay, well, I'll add that to my to-buy list. How do you plan your paintings from picture to drawing to choosing colors to final stage? Ooh, fun. So I asked the Animal Humane Society here in Minnesota. We have our Animal Humane Society, multiple locations all over the state, and they do such great work for animals. And we've gotten 3 of our 4 cats from there. And so I'm always on their adoption page, and I wrote to them asking if I could paint from their photos, and they said yes. So I'll go there and just see if there's some really cool expressive photos that I could paint from. So I'll take those kind of photos. I'll go to Unsplash. They have a lot of animal photos. I'll take my own photos. I went to the fish store the other day, got a ton of photos. That's where the funky fish reference photo came from. I just took a lot of pictures at the aquarium at the fish store in Hastings. That was really fun. So I get inspired by a reference photo, and typically I'll look at the photo and I'll just kind of know what colors I want to use. And that's I know, and I apologize because it's hard for me to explain how I just know what colors to use. I don't really get that part of my brain. But I did this painting of a black dog, Lucius, and I had a lot of green in it. And I just knew I wanted green. Like, his expression just said green to me. And I did this commission of a dog named Bernie, and his nose, the way he was kind of like looking like that, and I just like green. And but I don't use green all the time. I actually don't use it very often. But anyway, so I'll the photo and then the colors, and then of course then from there I typically paint big, just because big's easier for me. I can get more detail in there. So then I trace it, and then I plan out my steps and make sure I write down the colors I want to use. I typically think about what technique I'm going to use for each section of painting. And I have that pretty memorized now. Like, I know how to do ears and noses and eyes. But if there's something new that I haven't done in a while, like curly hair dog or something, I will think that through before I start painting and practice it and write it down, so that I know, okay, when I get to this patch of curly hair, I'm going to use my grainer brush. I'm probably going to negative paint. I'm going to scrape some highlights, and then I'm going to maybe do some color runs. So I'll think that through. Then I'll start painting, and I try to paint. I paint pretty fast. I like to get paintings done in 1 or 2 days, and then I let it dry, and then I scan it, and then I wax it, and then if it's a commission, I send it or I mount it if I'm keeping it. And for my 11 by 14 commissions, I let my clients choose if they want it mounted or not. And it's about half and half. So half don't want it mounted, half do. And I just include that in the price of the commission because it's kind of fun. I love it mounted, but some people love a traditional frame. So I hope that answers your question. The name you're talking about somebody else. Okay. Looked at your drawings, your styles. Beautiful. Thank you. Oh, Core Watercolor. I have not. I emailed them. I'm like, hey, Core, I want to be a brand ambassador. So we'll see what happens. I probably need more subscribers before they are interested in that. But I am so excited to try Core because I've heard that the binder that they use to bind their pigments together is just spreads when you put the paint on the paper, and I love that quality. And I've heard that the colors are super, super vibrant. And that's the thing with watercolor, right? You're kind of disappointed when it dries more dull than when you painted it. And that's one reason why I finish my art with Dorlands, because it brings some of that vibrancy and that depth back to the painting. But how cool would it be to have a lot less of that fading happen just in the drying process? So I am very excited to use Core. Either way, no matter what they tell me, I'm going to do, I'm going to try them out and maybe do a couple videos, at least a review video. We're going to start with that. All right. So how often do you clean your palette and start over? I feel like mine is I never. I'll clean it for videos just so you guys can see better what colors I'm pulling from my palette. I'll clean certain areas of it, but I typically don't clean it. If your palette is getting messy, you can likely just clean off a little bit of the top layer. So if you dipped your ultramarine brush in your pink, right, and you have some ultramarine in there and you want to get it out, you can likely just scrub that first tiny layer off very easily, and then when it's wet, dab a Kleenex in there. And if we do a demo, I'll demo that. That could be helpful. I never clean my palettes. You can get some lovely unexpected colors. Yeah, I think it's nice. You don't have to clean your palette, and that's the beauty of watercolors. It's just simple that way. And you can get some fun, unexpected colors, and just going with the flow of what happens can be really nice. I will say with yellow, you want to keep your yellow clean because a nice bright yellow looks so much better than a dirty yellow. So that would be the one where I would be a little bit more picky about it. What's the ideal number of colors to use in a pet portrait? If there's such a thing, can you go overboard with too many? Yes, I would say yes. you can absolutely go overboard with too many colors. Especially like I most pretty recently started planning my colors, and before that all my paintings, they were nice, but they were rainbows. So they had kind of every color from my palette in them. And rainbows are great, and maybe that's the right choice for your subject. But for now I'm a little bit more strategic with the colors I choose, even though I only have 7 colors. So I'll typically do like the main neutral that's in the pet, like black. Typically it's black, white, or brown. And then I'll pick a highlight color and a shadow color that I think will go well with those colors. And it just makes it really punchy. The other thing you can do is to only use one of your colors in one spot of that painting. So maybe you have a brown dog and you're doing some highlights with pinks and yellows and oranges, and maybe you're doing keeping it like a warm purple for the shadow. So overall you have this warm kind of orangey yellow painting, and then you only put blue in the eyes. And I tell you, that will be so dramatic. And people will be like, oh my gosh, the eyes. And you'll be like, yeah, it's because I only put blue right there. Because the second you put blue somewhere else in the painting, those eyes will not be as dramatic. So that would be my suggestion with that. Core paints do move beautifully, and they push other colors. I love bully colors. Colors that kind of bully the other colors around them and want to dominate. Okay, now I'm even more excited to try it. I think it's so cool when you let paint mix on the paper like that and just see what they do to each other. That sounds so fun. It's not easy to work with watercolors. I've been working with pencils for years. Yes, it's not. I guess, especially if you're used to a different medium. So if you love the way watercolor looks when you look at other artists who paint with it, then that's telling you something, like maybe I need to try this. And like with every new thing, you need to give it time, and you need to invest in it, and you need to know up front that you're going to make mistakes. But you have this joy of when you see watercolor and you know you want to get to that level, then it's worth it. And so you'll persevere through the hardships of learning it so you can get to that, to where you want to be with watercolor. And I would definitely say it's so worth it. And it helps a lot to what you guys are doing right now, just being on YouTube and investing time in learning and getting supplies. It will accelerate your progress so much faster than if you try to just struggle it out. So you're in the right place if you want to learn watercolor. But again, I mentioned this in my last live, that I'm the place to be if you want to learn pets and animals. But if you want to learn florals or landscapes or abstract watercolor, there are a lot of other amazing artists, even on YouTube, and definitely in books and courses and other things that I would look at if I were you. I have so many colors, but I always seem to use the same few. Hey, that's great. That's working for you. People love to see a cohesive collection and a cohesive vision when they follow a certain artist. So I think that you lean into that and you figured it out. I don't think you have to, unless you're excited to experiment with other colors and stuff. You don't have to. If you use the same, I think you're starting to figure it out. I saw a video where this person sealed their watercolor when they were finished. Yes, I do. I use Dorland's wax medium, and I do have a video about that. So it's called DIY watercolor framing. No plexi or glass, and I talk about how I finish my art, and I don't varnish it, but I do. If you use golden spray varnish, very good varnish, but I just don't like spraying. I always just feel like bad for the environment whenever I do that. But it is extremely effective. So my alternative to that is Dorland's wax medium. It's like this paste, and you literally wear a glove and you just rub it all over the surface of your art once it's dry. And it takes like a day to dry, so I just let it dry overnight. It's doesn't even really smell that bad. It's made with honey, I think. I don't know. It's really cool, and it makes the watercolor look at least 10 times better. It's kind of miraculous. It's amazing. I'd absolutely recommend doing that. Have you ever used watercolor ground or gesso? No, I haven't. I think Ashley Hawks gave me some. So I think she's used it. I know a lot of people do. And so I can't really speak to that. I can't answer that question. I'm not sure. But there are other watercolor surfaces you can use. Aquaboard, Yupa paper. You can use watercolor canvas. There's clayboard. There's a lot of different ways to watercolor. So I don't know, if you see something you're excited about, try it. See what happens. Does it matter if I use warm or cool or room temp water? No, I don't think it does. Not at all. I would say don't use hot water. That'll be abrasive, I would think, aggressive. But I don't think I've never noticed a problem with that. You don't have to worry about that. I took oil painting lessons, and I still haven't mastered oil painting. Yeah, it takes time. It really does. Obviously, the more you paint, the faster progress will happen. So that's kind of cool. There we go. Somebody's recommending watercolor ground. Yeah, if somebody else has tips for watercolor ground or gesso or things that I can't answer, I appreciate you putting some help in the comments. That's really nice. How do I keep my watercolor paper from buckling or warping? I hate smashing it under a load of books. Is there a way to minimize it while I'm painting? He's even used tape all the way around. Maybe he's using too much water. It looks like he's done a lot of troubleshooting and is a little frustrated with this. And I would say that would also be my number one frustration with watercolor, is that the paper ripples and it warps. And the best way, I would suggest 300-pound paper is my workaround for my larger paintings, and mounting it, because it gets flat once you mount it to a hard surface. Mounting it's a big step, so you might not be ready for that. The other thing is using when I'm doing smaller portraits, I can get away with 140 pound because it's just less water, it's less surface area, so it doesn't happen as much, but it still happens. So if you do not want to iron it and flatten it afterwards, I would suggest stretching it. And it's just something that I don't do because I just don't want to, but it is effective. So a lot of people will just soak it in a bin of water, your 140-pound paper, in a bin of water for 10 minutes, take it out, lay it on a flat surface like gator board, use gum tape to tape all around the edges, and then let it dry overnight. So they'll do that at night, they'll let it dry overnight, and then in the morning their watercolor paper's ready to go. And who knows, maybe down the road I'll actually start doing that just because it's worth it. An extra step, no matter what it is, whether it's flattening it at the end, mounting it, stretching it, that extra work is worth it, because a perfectly flat watercolor painting just looks so much better than a ripply one. It's worth it. You just have to try different things and figure out what you want to do. All right, so Garden Art Studio canvas want to use, doesn't accept watercolor very well. I think that's what people use watercolor ground for, is to prep other surfaces like canvas, so it will have a little bit of an absorption, it will absorb the water a little bit better than without the watercolor ground. Inspired me to paint a pug yesterday. Yay, pugs are so fun to paint. Those squishy, wrinkly, textury dogs. Oh, you can do so much with it. It's so fun. Oh, yes, blocks. I forgot blocks. Blocks are another solution to warping and rippling, because it's already a block of water paper is basically a pad, so multiple sheets of paper that are the same size, but they're glued all the way around except for 1 inch that you can sneak a palette knife in there to loosen the paper and release it. But the point is that you paint on it before you take it off the block, because it can't move because it's already glued. The reason I don't typically use blocks is because I don't know if my favorite paper comes in blocks, but even if it did, I think New York Central Art Supply does come in blocks, so I might have to try that. But you can't window trace with it. You have to use, if you trace, you have to use carbon transfer paper. And I don't like using carbon transfer paper as much as I like window tracing. So, as you can see, I've had these workarounds to have my process work best for me, to keep me excited to paint and producing the most paintings as possible. But your workaround and your process will likely look different, and that's great. You got to find what works for you, what makes you excited to watercolor. I use clear and white watercolor ground on canvas. Yeah. So there's a lot of things you can do to paint on. I struggle with how much water is too much, how to know how much water is best for what I want to achieve. You know, I think a lot of people struggle with that, and I think more. If you're concerned, just put more water on your paper because it can always dry. At least try it. Try a painting or a technique with more and see what happens. It's hard to know unless I see like your actual art to know how much you're already using, but it's something you have to get used to. And typically from what I've seen with new watercolor artists is that they don't use enough water, at least on their paper. Sometimes they'll use a lot of water in their palette, and then they won't have these heavy mixes of paint, they'll have these watery mixes of paint. So you can use less water in that regard, especially if you have a lot of water on your paper, because then you're going to dilute whatever color you put into that water. So a heavy mix of color on a nice thick area of water on your paper is my best suggestion. And just practicing techniques maybe before you implement them in a painting to see, oh wait, that works really well, or that didn't work at all, and just kind of figuring things out. I window trace too, but people say tracing is cheating. Yeah, they can say whatever they want to say. I don't know. I don't claim to be a drawer. I'm a painter. I can draw. I drew a second place animal portrait at the state fair, won second place. It was a watercolor it was a watercolor painting, but I drew it by hand. So it helps you have drawing skills because it will help you refine your tracing. It will help you understand proportions and drawing best practices. So it's good to know how to draw and to practice that. But if drawing, and I've seen this in other pet portrait artists that I know, drawing was keeping them from painting. The thought of having to draw out an entire animal portrait by hand was keeping them from ever starting a painting. And I realized that was me too, where the thought of having to draw for 2 hours was like, ugh, I just want to start. But the thought of painting for 2 hours, now that's a different story. So I trace, and I'm very transparent about that. And I think people who maybe think it's cheating maybe just aren't artists. I don't know. I don't let that bother me. Let's see. Yes. Okay. So I wanted to mention too, I've had a lot of you share your artwork with me, and that has been so fun. And I just wanted to show you where you can do that on my website. So if you're on aquilawatercolor.com/share, you can just fill out this form and upload your file or files. You can upload up to 3. And then I will go ahead and it will pop up here on the bottom, and we can see all the student artwork. And it just makes me so happy. I can't believe it. This is so cool. Look at these things, you guys. Wow. It's really neat too, the different styles that are happening with the same tutorial. Like how different these fish paintings are ending up, even though they all came from the same. Pretty neat, pretty cool. Anyway, so share it with me if you are excited to. Don't feel pressured. Oh my gosh, you don't have to. It's your stuff. So I've also wanted to mention, I did make a video, where I talked about American Journey paints as being one of my most highly recommended. I love it. But in that same exact video, I also said, Da Vinci paints aren't that great. And I've had a lot of people come back and say that, hey, Da Vinci manufactures American Journey paints. So they very well could be the same paint with different brand names. The thing is, I recommended it in that way because I used to use Da Vinci for a very long time. And I think it's both that I wasn't using the best colors. I didn't really have the best sense of color mixing. And my skills have improved since then. So it's been so long since I used Vinci paints that I just kind of thought, well, they're probably not the best because I like American Journey so much better. But it could have been, I don't know for sure if they're exactly the same. But anyway, just keep that in mind. Every recommendation is just a personal experience too of what I think has worked for me. And I'm just trying to share what I know and what I can know. But I can't know everything. I didn't know that. And some people said that the opera pink from American Journey might actually not be quite as fugitive as we thought it was. Fugitive means it fades. So that was the problem with opera pink. Anyway, that's a little bit about that. There are somebody recommended Roman Smalls quinacridone magenta, quinacridone warm scarlet as alternatives to opera pink that are more light fast. So if you're scared to use opera pink because it can fade, then I would just look into some alternatives. They are out there, but they won't be, I don't think they're going to be quite as beautiful and punchy as opera pink is. So I'd love to know too, as we keep going, and I should have asked these at the beginning, I forgot to, but I would love to know, especially with this last week where we've been talking about techniques, if you had a favorite technique that you tried, especially if you had a favorite fin technique. So we painted the funky fish, and we had 4 different techniques. I think it was 4 on the funky fish, where, here we go, where we had negative painting. We pulled color with a pencil for pencil painting. We did scraping here and here, and then we did negative painting on this fin. So it was really fun to paint fins 4 different ways, and I'm just curious if you had a favorite technique or aha moment when you did that. If you've had a cool win from the program so far, what you hope to do with watercolor as your skills grow. And I'd also love to know if there's anything you'd love to see me do in the future on YouTube or in general. So I've had somebody ask me if I do in-person classes, if I'm on Patreon, which is no, I'm not. But if you'd like to see some kind of membership or classes or other YouTube videos that you'd love me to put out there. So please let me know either in the comments on the chat, email me at aquilawatercolor@gmail.com, leave a comment on a YouTube video. It will really help me make sure that I'm producing what you're hoping to see. And it'll give me some good ideas. Your channel was created in 2011. Your oldest video is from 8 years ago. Was it easier to reach audiences on YouTube before or now? Where did that go? Yeah. So, gosh, I started when my son was born in 2016. I was home with him, and so I thought, well, I'll just start YouTube. And I was consistent for a little while with a series called Watercolor Wednesdays, and that was really fun. But then life happens, and he got older, and I got busier, and that just fell away. And now my son is 8, and my daughter is 13, and I got laid off from my job in May, so I thought, okay, this is it. It's now or never. I'm going for it. I'm not sure. I grew back then, but I only grew to about 450 people, and now I have over 5,000. So I think it's more of content, and it matters with your hook and your title and your intro. So there's a lot of variables with YouTube. I don't understand them all yet. I'm definitely learning. I'm learning filming. I'm learning YouTube best practices. But I'm very happy with the growth that I've seen since I started being consistent. I started posting again back in May, but I only posted about 1 video a month until December, when I started posting 2 per month. And then, of course, this program started January 1st. And I'm posting more 3 to 5 per week. Not 2 per month. I was doing 2 per week in December, but now I'm doing 3 to 5. But I think it's more important that you get the right content is more important than quantity. So that's why I'm curious what you guys really want to see, because the content is more important that I'm making good content. All right, let's see what else we have. I love using the grainer brush. Right? If you paint fur, feathers, or foliage, you need a grainer brush. What's the best way to get a stiff stray bristle off my painting without wrecking it. You know, I could demo that too. I always get cat hairs on my painting. Sometimes I get bristles on my painting. And honestly, the best time to remove them, if it's something, this changes because typically when a painting is dry, you can just wipe them off, but it can leave an imprint on your painting if it dries on your painting. So I'll demo that. Why don't I go, I'll demo if I can find a cat hair and I'll demo the palette. Tracing is absolutely not cheating. Hey, there we go, right? Absolutely. Okay. Yep, we have some comments about Rich Opera. Thank you for helping me out with that. That is so great. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you. In-depth video and adding cool line work. Yes. So I will read through the comments. If you guys are adding your comments, answering my questions, I'll read through those and I'll keep my notes updated to make sure I give you everything you want in the future. Let's go ahead and do that quick demo. Just showing you a good way to clean your palette if it's kind of dingy. So here we see that our buff titanium clearly had been mixed with some opera pink. It has some pink, so I'll just touch the surface with a wet brush and then I will get a Kleenex and dab it off. So you can see that that picked up a lot of the pink. So you'll lose a little bit of paint, but if you want to get it clean, that's a good way to do it. There's a cat hair right here. Look at that, we didn't even have to try that hard. So, I mean, it's hard to see, it's kind of a small one. So if you're painting and you see one and it's really wet, sometimes you'll be able to just pick it up. So I just picked it up with my brush and I got it. The other thing you can do is leave it there and wait for it to dry and then pick it up. It's right here. And then pick it up once it's dry. But there is a chance, especially if you have like a thicker bristle, that you will get an outline of pigment around that. So if you're worried about it, you can just try to pick it up with your existing brush and get rid of it before it dries. Otherwise, if you're not too worried, you can just wipe it off when it's fully dry. But you want to be able to just be a little bit careful. If you end up lifting some pigment, you might have to put some back as you go. It's just, practicing, figuring it out. All right, I don't have anything else to demo. I didn't really know quite what to demo today. I hope you all had fun learning the techniques on everything. I will say that when I did splatter, I fell in love with this. How if you do a lot of power on your splatter, you can kind of get it to really spray a little bit, and I thought that was pretty fun. But I really had fun with this funky fish. It was risky business because I painted it as I went, so I was committed. I couldn't redo this one because I was committed to doing it each video, and once the video had gone out, we had already started it, and so then we had to keep using it, which is good. I think it turned out really great, and I'm really happy with the funky fishes that I have seen from all of you so far. So that's about it. I went through all the questions that I was hoping to get through, and you all asked some amazing questions as well. So yes, please continue to send me some chats or email me, comment on my videos so I know what you want to see. We'll do one last question and then we'll call it a day for today since it's been about an hour. How do you enlarge your drawings to such a large size that I see when you demonstrate tracing using your window? Yeah, I upload a photo into Canva and then I zoom in on that photo until it's the same size I want it in real life. And then I'll take my tracing paper and literally put it right on my monitor, my computer monitor where the photo is, and use a Sharpie to trace it. So that's how big, and then I have to tile it. So sometimes I'll have to scroll over to get this side of the reference photo trace, and then I have to scroll up or scroll down. I'll have to tape multiple pieces of tracing paper together to make sure I get it big enough. So that's what I do. Do you ever do the same painting more than once? Yes, I did the first day fish more than once. I filmed the whole first day fish and I thought it looked a little tight, so I redid it. I'm really glad I did. So sometimes that happens. I have had to do that with a commission a few times. Not too many times. Sometimes if it's not working, I'll be like, oh, it's just not working. I'll give you a refund. But not very often. That was kind of more in the beginning. But yes, sometimes you have to, because with watercolor, you can't go in and fix everything. And if you try, it can start to look really stiff and really muddy. So would a tutorial of the funky fish all in one go, not across different videos? Yeah, I could edit those. But see, the point of the funky fish was to practice those techniques. And if I was to do a tutorial of the funky fish from start to finish, I wouldn't have painted it in that order. And I wouldn't have used 4 different techniques for the fins. So I don't think I'll go and do a separate tutorial of the funky fish. I think I'm going to leave it like that, so it kind of forces us to practice those techniques. But there's going to be a lot of paint-alongs coming up. So I wouldn't worry about it. I'm definitely going to do fish. I'm definitely going to do dogs and birds and cats. That was what everybody wanted to see, those 4 things, when I did that poll. So there'll be more tutorials and there'll be more fish, and it'll be a lot of fun. All right, fixing scares me. Yes, you can't fix everything. You can't. Yeah, and that it's a hard pill to swallow when you feel like maybe you've ruined your painting. And I think a way to ruin a painting is to try to fix something, like something big, and you try to scrub, and maybe you're adding opaque paint to a certain area. And that's a surefire way to make it look messy and muddy and overworked, and it could ruin your painting. So I won't let it stop you from trying fixing it, but sometimes the answer is to just restart. But that is, again, something we're going to go over in the common beginner challenges video that we solve, because those are common issues in watercolor. So I'm going to try to give you guys some tips for that. So a seahorse, horses and sheep. All right, yeah, we could do a farm animal or like a under the sea theme. A seahorse would be cool. That could be a lot of fun. It's hard. Fish are hard for me because they don't have very much expression. And the thing with me, with pet portraits, why I love them is because dogs especially can be so expressive. And I struggle with that with fish. But with this funky fish, he just had this big frown. He was looking at you with both eyes. And I thought, okay, this is an expressive fish. Fish are hard to get to be expressive. But farm animals, I mean, there's a lot of ways to find expressive photos and work with that. So that's it for today. I am so appreciative of all the chats, all your ideas, all your questions. Amazing. Thank you. And I will see you, not tomorrow, we don't have a video, but the next day we get to start with, it's Mastering Watercolor Week. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I will see you then, and happy painting, and thank you so much. Bye.